most of what we learn in college is basically how to solve problems. And I definitely think data is just how are you solving problems with numbers, uh, and code and formulas and functions and graphs and stuff like that. So I definitely think the problem solving skills I learned, going to school for chemical engineering, are really useful. And
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting skills that data professionals use on a daily basis. Plus, we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So thank you for tuning in, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And as always, folks, happy learning. Today with us, we have Avery Smith. How are you doing today, Avery?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm proud to be a nerd. Proud to be here.
Yay, good. You're one of the top nerds in my opinion. So glad to have you here.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
Awesome. So we start off our show by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Sure. So I actually started as a chemical engineer studying in college. I chose chemical engineering because I liked chemistry and I liked math in high school. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'll just combine those two and that will be really fun. And then, like 3 weeks into school, I was like, crap, I hate this and I'm not having a lot of fun. I got kind of lucky because I was working in a chemical lab. So I like wore a white coat and like gloves and goggles every day. And I got super lucky that the company I was working for, this lab, actually did a lot of data analysis. And I found that on the job that they were doing that. And I was like, well, that stuff's really cool. Taking these numbers and making sense of it and creating stories and algorithms and stuff with all these numbers. And so I got really pumped up about that and started doing more of that at work, and then more of that at work, and more of that at work. And then pretty soon I was just doing a bunch of data at work, to the point where, I was a data analyst, then I was a data scientist at that job. And yeah, I didn't have to be a chemical engineer anymore, which was awesome. And then I've gone on and worked for ExxonMobil as a data scientist. I've worked with the Utah Jazz, Harley Davidson, and some of my consulting. And now I also have a podcast called Data Career Podcast, where I talk to people about how to land their first data job and have an accompanying boot camp with that. But that's kind of how I went from chemistry to data.
That's awesome. I love that transition of, where you start and then where you are now. Do you still do anything related to chemistry?
That's a good question. My biggest like consulting client that I've ever had was very like chemistry heavy, so that was very useful. But other than that, not really. I don't really. I try to avoid it as much as I can, to be honest.
What about the skill sets that you learned in chemistry? Have you seen like those follow you along your path?
Oh, for sure. I really think that most of what we learn in college is basically how to solve problems, and I definitely think data is just how are you solving problems with numbers, uh, and code and formulas and functions and graphs and stuff like that. So I definitely think the problem solving skills I learned, going to school for chemical engineering, are really useful. And like at the end of the day, Googling is like half of the work, and I Googled a lot in college. So I definitely think it helps. I don't know if like the necessary, like if I have to remember, what the fugacity of, iron is, or like what its heat capacity is. Like those things don't really help me too much, but definitely the problem solving, which I think you get in a lot of degrees in general, especially like technical degrees.
I agree. So, what exactly does the overlap of chemical engineering and data analysis look like? Like, what problems are you solving there?
Oh, I think there's quite a few actually. I didn't realize that when I was getting started, but one of the like most important things in chemistry is actually manufacturing, because like really chemistry is, I mean, chemistry is very useful at a small scale and like experiments and stuff like that. But when you think about it in like a bigger picture, like for instance, chemistry is basically pharmaceuticals, right? And pharmaceuticals are really about bringing medicine to the masses. So how do we scale things up from a petri dish to the size of millions? And there's a lot of whenever you're scaling anything, there's a lot of data to be had because it becomes very difficult to actually keep track of everything that's going on at one given time. So we kind of let numbers do that. So manufacturing is huge in chemistry, and data is huge in manufacturing. So when I worked at ExxonMobil, that's what I was mostly doing. But then there's like this whole other world of chemistry and data that I didn't even like fully get a full grasp on. Like there's like the quantum aspect of it and being able to predict where different like atoms are at different periods. I wasn't super interested in that. But when I first started, I was like really getting into like chemical reaction data and like how how you can like predict and measure what might happen if these two different things collide into each other, and how much of it is going to like turn to this and how much of it is going to turn into that. There's like a whole actual like realm of data science plus chemistry called chemometrics. So like chem like chem, and then metrics is in like data. So it's like a whole realm. So when I first started, I actually wanted to be what's called a chemometrician, which is basically a data scientist that focuses on chemistry. So there's like a whole realm that like I don't think gets talked about very often.
Interesting. Wow. So then what talking about like the math side of it, what like math stuff kind of followed you along the way in your path?
Well, I mean, since I was a chemical engineer, I wasn't just pure chemistry. At my job, I was kind of pure chemistry when I first started. But like as an engineer, you have to take like calculus in college, which I actually don't think calculus is a big part of data. Like especially if you're a data analyst, I don't think it's really relevant. If you're a data engineer, I don't think it's super relevant either. If you're a data scientist, it becomes a little bit more relevant, like just because some of the like algorithms depend on basically like taking a derivative and setting it to zero and solving for something. So like calculus is something that I learned in college that definitely I used as a data scientist. Same with linear algebra. Like I had a whole like semester
Oh,
of linear algebra, which once again, if you're a data analyst or a data engineer, probably not as helpful. Maybe a little bit as a data engineer, probably not as a data analyst, but as a data scientist, a lot of the algorithms and there's like even like there's just like a bunch of stuff you can do with linear algebra. I think I would have been fine and survived without those skills, but definitely having that math background was helpful.
yeah, that's good. I had one of my pharmacy friends. She took organic chemistry in college. Is that something that you took? I heard horror
Yeah,
stories from that. Is that like the worst course ever?
it's not a fun one. That's for sure. I liked it more than what people would call like physical chemistry or quantum chemistry, which I could even barely tell you what that's about. Like at least in organic chemistry, it was like, oh yeah, these are how like different like molecules like interact with each other, and like the different like atoms like either repel or attract each other. That was fine, but like physical chemistry is like waves and like I don't even know. It was quantum stuff. It was that stuff I barely got through, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So, what was your favorite course in college then?
Well, as soon as I figured out, crap, I hate chemical engineering, I was like, I need to try to take the least chemical engineering classes possible and take the most data classes possible. So I took like a data science class as an elective that was super fun. I really enjoyed. I took another class that was it was called Smart Systems, very similar to what I described as like how do you scale up manufacturing systems in an intelligent way, like and make data driven decisions. And that class was actually taught by like my mentor in college, Dr. Cody Powell, and he previously worked pretty heavily with data at ExxonMobil. And so when I went to ExxonMobil, I worked in like his sister team that he used to work at. So that was like really good practice for me to try to use data like in the manufacturing world. So any class where I like was focusing on data, I was thoroughly enjoying.
That's awesome. Good that you like found out about it before you got too much into your adult career.
Yeah, I was super lucky that way where like literally like I said, like a couple weeks, couple months into school, I was like, oh man, this is not what I want to do. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do instead because I knew I was interested in data and programming, but there at the time and even now, there's still not a whole lot of like data analytics or data science undergrads.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, okay, do I go study computer science? Which I think which would have been great and maybe even better. But I wasn't really interested in programming for programming's sake. Like I wasn't really super interested in that. And then it was like, okay, do I go to statistics? And it was like, well, I don't really want like just like a math degree. I think this is a little biased maybe, and I'm sorry to all the math people listening, but I think sometimes a lot of math people like struggle to actually like apply all the crazy math they know to like the real world and like get a great job and stuff. And so I was like, I don't think that's the direction I wanted to go. So I just kind of stuck with where I was going and just tried to make it as data as possible, and it worked out. I definitely got lucky.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is actually an applied mathematics path. I don't know what that exactly means because I also kind of have trouble with, trying to apply that to real world scenarios, but it's out there. It exists.
It does for sure. I mean, math people are always wicked smart, and a lot of them end
Absolutely.
up getting like PhDs, and that was at that particular time not something I was super interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. So let's get more into what you do today. So what's your, what's your favorite part about what you do right now?
Oh, I have the coolest job in the world. I really just get to help people land their first data job. That is like my primary focus of helping people break into this awesome field that has given me so much, and I'm really grateful for it. So I get the opportunity to do that. So I do that in a couple different ways. If you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts, and so one of the cool things I get to do is do something similar to Monica and have a podcast. It's called the Data Career Podcast, where I get to talk, sometimes just solo episodes, or I'll have guests come on and talk about different topics that will help people land their first data job. And I really enjoy doing the podcast because it's one of those cool things where it's like you just got to have conversations with cool people, and those conversations help other people. So it's kind of like a win-win-win in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I learned so much from my guests too, like personally. And so my podcast, I started it for me. And so it's just good that it helps others as well.
For sure. I actually just booked a couple guests. I won't tell you who their names are, but to be honest, they're a lot of like me booking them is like, man, I want to get to know this person and just like figure out like so ask them some good questions type of thing. So there is some selfishness behind it, I think for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep getting deeper into nerdy fun bits. Hey, nerd, are you looking for a career in data? I would absolutely love to help you out. I just launched a data career strategy program that helps folks break into data without breaking anything. I provided a link in the show notes if you want to learn more information about it. Now, back to the fun bits. I know that you're really, really passionate about data projects. And you also personally like to do running and biking. You just did an Ironman, right? Is that what it's called? And
Yep.
so I want to talk about projects like when you did your Ironman, did you do any type of like data work there?
Oh, that's super fun. I would say, yeah, I'm a huge fan of personal projects. I feel like if you're a data professional, you should try to live your life a little data driven when you can. So I have done projects like on like health and fitness in the past, like monitoring like your step count every day, or I've done some visualizations of some of the crazy hikes and crazy runs that I've done in Power BI. I know I have one of those on my YouTube channel where I analyzed a really hard like run I did in Power BI. For the Ironman, I don't think I really did anything in particular, other than whenever I do any sort of fitness, I always record it. So I have like multiple, I have too many fitness watches. that I use. I track my sleep a lot of the time as well. So there was some like maybe like day-to-day decisions, like looking at my sleep, deciding how hard I would work out, or Strava. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's a really cool app. We actually just interviewed the ex head of data at Strava, just like a really cool app. And I use that a lot to keep track of like my runs for the week, like how many miles I was getting, how many meters I was swimming, and stuff like that. So I was keeping track of everything, and like analyzing it, like mostly in Strava, just the stuff they have in house. Uh, but I do love trying to be data driven. Like I gave my dog a Fitbit and analyzed that data for a while. Yeah, that was fun.
What kind of insights did you get from your dog?
It was like mostly just like how many steps she was getting and like what hours of the day type of thing. So that was really fun. I've done a project on my screen time before, just like actually looking at screen time across a longer period of time, like what apps I was using, stuff like that. I think personal projects are super fun.
Yeah. Going back to the dog project, how long did you have the Fitbit on her?
Oh, you know what's funny is I think it was only like a month or so. And
Okay.
I can't remember why I stopped. If it like ran out of batteries and I just like charged it and never put it back in, or if it broke or something. But yeah, probably just like a month's worth of data.
That's a good amount of data. So the thing that popped up in my head first was like, does she have a certain sleep schedule?
Yeah, I can't. It was honestly, that was like pre-COVID, and everything like that was pre-COVID might as well have been like 20 years ago, it feels like. So
Oh,
it's hard to
absolutely.
remember.
I agree. What is your favorite project that you've ever worked on personally?
Oh man, that's a good question. I Oh, well, maybe I don't know. I really liked the work I did when I started as a lab technician for this company called Vapor Sense. And I really enjoyed the work I did there. Like it was really meaningful, and I think we were doing some pretty cool things. Um, I actually did. This is probably, what was this, 3 years ago now? Maybe it was 2 years ago now. Almost exactly 2 years ago. I actually built 30 data science projects in 30 days. Yeah, and I every day I built a new project, and I uploaded a video to YouTube. So I did 30 YouTube videos in 30 days, and that was pretty crazy to do. My favorite project in that one, I'm just pulling them up here. One of the cool, yeah, okay, I made a fitness dashboard in Power BI. One of the things I did though that I really liked, oh yeah, right here, is I use data science to find McDonald's healthiest meal. So like
Hmm.
I used linear programming to basically find the McHealthy meal, where if I wanted to eat exclusively at McDonald's for my nutrient needs, what should I do? And that was a pretty cool project to do.
Do you remember what the result was?
Yeah. So first off, I'll say like I don't think water was part of it. So that's first off. But I think the rest of it was like I basically got Dr. Pepper's. Yeah, I just pulled it up. Dr. Pepper's, Diet Dr. Pepper's, five side salads. So two Diet Dr. Peppers, five side salads, two apple slices, and five oatmeals without sugar.
Okay. And that's one meal?
No, that was
Okay.
that was like the whole. That's all I ate all day, type of a thing.
Oh, okay. I see. I see.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it was like if I wanted to like hit like 1,800 calories and like a certain amount of protein and like not have a certain amount of sugar type of thing, what would you suggest? And this is the optimal to minimize the calorie intake.
Okay, that makes sense. Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, I don't know what the nutrients behind Dr. Pepper are. Probably not very much, but for some reason, that's what the linear programming algorithm ended up finding as optimal.
Yeah. I just saw something on Instagram the other day. Dr. Pepper isn't anything but the mixture of Coke and root beer. So I'm gonna need to buy some Coke and root beer this weekend and try it out.
Yeah, let me know because I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either.
It has 37 unique ingredients. Isn't that like part of their marketing? I'm pretty sure that like don't they like
Yeah.
say that on
Also, like
the
cherry is one of the ones that I can taste.
23 ingredients? So
Yeah.
not just Coke and root beer. That'd only be two. And yeah, you're right. The cherry's totally there. There's like a cherry like taste to it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm calling
So,
BS. We'll have to
yeah,
see.
me too. I'll let you know. I'll give you a
Okay, thank you.
number. All right. So you did 30 projects in 30 days, and I'm assuming that during that time frame you had to learn new things because you don't know everything. Nobody can know everything, right? So, what's your approach when you're learning new things?
Okay, interesting. I will say this: when I did the 30 data science projects in 30 days, I did try to make it easy for myself. So I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
like. I don't think I like went out there and was like, I want to do something I've never done before. But that being said, like there's definitely obviously times in my career where I've had to learn new things. I am a learner in two different ways, and I found this out kind of throughout my life of just going to school. I guess you go to school for how long? Like 12th grade, basically. So I guess there's kindergarten too, though. So is that, I don't know. So like 12th grade plus 4 years of college. So that's like 16 plus a master's degree, right? So that puts me at like 18 years of school, right? I suck at lectures, terrible at lectures. Like I can't just like sit there and just like watch a PowerPoint. I either learn by reading and by doing. That's like the two ways I learn. So but to be perfectly honest, like I don't have like too many technical books. I do have quite a bit about data visualization. So I really, when it comes to like learning data things, I really learn by doing, and that's where that projects come back in. It's like I will just like be like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is kind of how I'm going to do it. Let's just find a tutorial of like someone who's done something kind of similar, or just like read the documentation of the code and stuff like that. I'm a big learner by doing. For me, that's how it cements in. So I will just try to like start from scratch and gotta build it as I go, even if I don't really know what I'm doing. And for me, that's just the easiest and fastest way to learn. How about you?
Yeah. Um, I don't do well with the reading, so mine's more of in-person lectures or now video lectures are fine as well, and also doing. So huge, I completely agree with the personal projects and actually getting your hands dirty and doing something because I can watch the video and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it just kind of flies out my head, right? But if you actually apply it, then you realize like, oh, I actually do know it, or oh, I don't, and then you have to dig deeper. So,
I agree. I think it's important to realize or to try to figure out which way you learn best, and try to optimize for that. Because I don't think we're all the same. Like for instance, if you're listening to this podcast, you might learn really well with audio, right? So maybe you want to try to learn more with audio versus like in-person lectures or versus doing. So I really think it's important for each person to try to find the way that they learn best.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And at what pace that you learn the best too, right? So if I'm reading an audiobook, I don't know why this popped in my head, but when I'm reading an audiobook, if I am reading, I have to pop up the pace most of the time.
I think that's huge for me. I think I don't know what one of my issues with lectures. Like I can't do even in-person lectures. I'm not very good at doing. I played a lot of this like golf app on my phone when I was in college, when I was in lectures, just because
Mm.
I couldn't really focus that way. So I really think that like, oh man, like I just think it's important that you figure out what works best for you. For me, I have to like, the reading's really good for me because I will take tons of notes in the book. I don't know that really works really well for me. Audio is not great for me. I really enjoy listening to stuff and learning that way, but I find
Mhm.
that the learning doesn't really stick like in terms of like actually applying it. Like I have to really kind of, there has to be like a step where I take notes for it. So anyways, it is important to try to find that balance.
Absolutely. It sounds like you're a handwritten note person.
I teeter back and forth. In college, I was all handwritten notes. Now I really like, even like with like planning, I'll do like half by hand and like half in like a calendar. I'm a huge fan of Notion. Have you used Notion before?
Slightly. I want to get more into it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve. Um, like my poor wife. We like whenever like we're like taking note, like we try to like plan our vacations pretty in depth, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna use Notion, and she's like, why can't we just use like the Apple Notes or like the iPhone Notes or like Google Docs? And I'm like, you don't get it. This is so much better. Anyways, I'm a huge fan of Notion, and most of my like notes and planning happens in Notion nowadays. So I've kind of moved digital, but I definitely like handwritten stuff. And there's some stuff I leave to handwritten.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't do handwritten. I can't even read my own handwriting
Yeah, I
ever.
guess that's a good start. Huh?
Yeah, it's rough. So whenever I'm, listening to a lecture or whatever, I'm just taking notes on my computer, kind of like I'm in a courtroom. The stenographers. I'm just
Oh
like
yeah, there
going
you
to
go.
town, right? And that actually makes me remember it better because it comes out of my body onto my fingers.
I think I remember seeing you take a lot of notes when we were
Yeah,
together
yeah,
at South Carolina for the Posit meetup. So yeah, there you go.
yep. That's me.
That's great. If it works for you, that's great. I mean, why not?
What's your favorite feature in Notion?
Oh, I guess it's less about like what my favorite. Well, I don't know. It's not maybe my favorite feature in Notion, but like one thing that drives me nuts about Google Docs is how like there's just like no really linking multiple like files together. And I
Mm.
hate like the folder structure. Like they have like a really like awful folder structure. And in Notion, it's like you have like a sidebar with like all of your like folders. But there's a lot of flexibility to how those folders are, and like each file could have like multiple folders in it and like multiple like texts and images and videos. Yeah. Anyways, like one of the things I'm doing right now is I am using Notion to like manage our podcast clips. So we, interview people, and then we try to take some of the interesting parts, and we're using like a database inside of Notion to keep track of, have we posted this? Yes or no? We even use it to store the actual like video file. Like imagine using Google Docs to store videos. It doesn't really work that way. So
Hmm.
Notion just offers a lot of flexibility.
Okay. So, few years ago, probably a decade ago now, I was using Microsoft OneNote a whole bunch. Is that very similar?
Yeah, I've used OneNote before. I think this is better, but it
Okay.
definitely is a little bit more like organized like OneNote.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Am I converting you?
I think so. I know. I'm like, if it is like OneNote, then I absolutely do want to try it out.
Where do you take your notes right now?
Right now, all over the place, but like on my Google Drive, either in Docs or my spreadsheets.
I like it. I like it.
I'm a big fan of just Notepad plus plus.
Save as a text file?
No, that's what I have up and running, and then I'll take it and I'll put it into
Okay.
either like a spreadsheet or a Google Docs or
Gotcha.
wherever to
Polish it.
organize
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah, but a Notepad plus plus is always open on my computer.
Great. There you go.
Yeah. So, what do you have any recommendations or final words of encouragement for the listeners out there?
I think varying the ways that you learn is always a good thing. Like for instance, I think if you're listening to a podcast, I mean, you're probably already doing that. But I definitely think varied learnings of like, oh, I'm going to learn about this with a podcast episode and a YouTube video and like a hands-on course and a book. I think for me, that really cements things in and kind of like patches my learning together. So that's one thing, is like vary your learning. And the second one is, oh yeah, is a community. Like if you can do things in a community, I feel like that makes everything a lot better. Right now, I love to run, but I love to run in my running group even more. It's a lot of fun to do that. So if you can find the community that works for you, whether it's from an in person or an online group. Online groups are usually easier to find. To find like a group of people that are doing something similar, I think is really important. So if you can do that, I would suggest doing it.
I agree. I'll double tap on the finding a community. So much like you're running, I enjoy dancing. And so I have my own stuff in my workout room that I do by myself. But when I can, I love going to the group classes, you know? So just dancing with
100%.
other people.
It makes life a lot more enjoyable and things a lot easier to learn.
It does. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Avery, for coming on the show. If any of the listeners have any questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
Yeah, if you guys want to listen to the podcast, check it out. Data Career Podcast, wherever you're listening to this one, you'll find mine. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so you can hit me up at Avery Smith on LinkedIn. And then I'm actually on most social platforms as well. So if you just search Avery Smith Data, you'll probably find me. But LinkedIn and the podcast are probably the two I focused on the most. So looking forward to meeting you guys.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Avery. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Happy learning.